Hello, friends. Welcome to Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is OCM, the new standard for global imports with Century's Jim McCullen. How's it going, Jim?
Hey, Joe. Great to be here today.
So, Jim, please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from today.
Sure, absolutely. So, Jim McCullen, I'm Chief Technology Officer at Century Supply Chain Solutions. Century is a global logistics provider. We've been around for over 50 years. Originally a Japanese company and moved to the U.S. back in the late 80s. Century, our focus is on something that we're going to talk a lot about today, Joe, origin cargo management. But we have a full suite of services. So our core focus is origin cargo management, but we also have an NVO division, customs brokerage division, domestic distribution and transload operations. And then we wrap that all together in our Visive supply chain technology that helps us to orchestrate our customers' supply chains. And we're located just outside of Richmond, Virginia. I'm actually in Charlottesville, which is a little closer to the mountains here in Virginia. But yeah, love Virginia.
Yeah, very nice area. So one more time on the services you guys provide.
Origin, let's just start at a high level at Origin Cargo Management. So Origin Cargo Management, large importers, retailers, manufacturers, distributors hire us to be their, in essence, middleman between their vendors around the world and their transportation providers. And so we have offices and people in every country around the world in our technology, our Visive platform. And so we're there to make sure that the supply chain is operating the way each one of those importers wants it to. So that's the core service offering. From there, we have an NVO division, so ocean freight transportation services. We have a customs brokerage arm. So, the idea being that we can offer a full suite of services from the origin all the way through the destination. And then we have the domestic distribution and transload services. And so that can be domestic control tower services where we are coordinating and handling the freight as it's coming off the port into the customer's distribution centers. We'll coordinate all of that. Or if a customer is transloading, they can either do it through our operations or through their own chosen third parties, and we'll still bring Visive into the process so that they can see everything in one place.
And by the way, I should mention, I always look at who's the top 100 logistics companies. You guys are one of those guys, one of those big companies. And I joke about our industry. The names are always kind of American or standard. No offense to any of you guys, but they don't stick out. Like there's a lot of Fortune 500 companies where you go, like how many times did you look at NVIDIA before you're like, what the, how do you even pronounce that? What is that? But our business, we keep it plain.
We do. It's pretty straightforward. And it was certainly, as Century as the core name, it was pretty hard, even in the early days, getting domain names and things like that.
Oh, so. I said it years ago. Somebody said, Joe, we want you to help us relaunch our name. I was like, what's the new name? They're like, Phoenix. I go, Phoenix. So you sat down and changed your mind. I go, there's 1,000 Phoenix Logistics. What'd you change from? Anyway, getting back to it, OCM, it's been around for a while. We'll talk more about this in a minute. But I told you when we were prepping to do this episode, I said, I've never heard anyone say OCM or origin cargo management. And then you explained why it is so important now. And why don't you give us the short course on why that is so important now, even though it's been around for a long time and probably was always important, but even more important now?
Sure, absolutely. So I think, there's large retailers out there that have been using origin cargo management for 20 plus years, right? So it's been around since I've been in the industry, and I've been here at Century for 37 years now. And so OCM and origin cargo management, it was in the early days, it was called buyers consolidation. And then it's kind of at times been called PO management and origin cargo management. But origin cargo management is the core terminology. And it is really a blend of both technology, the people or supply chain experts, and the infrastructure around the world to be able to support global supply chains. And so if I think about somebody, and we do have customers that come to us regularly that have have no OCM provider, and they're managing all of this themselves. And it's amazing to see the transition and transformation within their companies when we bring these services to play. And I think where we saw a huge ramp up was during COVID. So you know at that point in time when supply chains were just kind of working, right? Like things just happened the way you expected them to. And then COVID hit and everything changed, right? And you had to be able to adapt very, very quickly. And if you didn't have an OCM provider, think about it. If you're dealing with, maybe hundreds or thousands of suppliers around the world, and maybe, 10 or dozen or more carriers or transportation providers, and you've got to make a change in your supply chain very, very quickly. How do you do that without somebody like Century coordinating it all, right? Like your teams
You
have
have
to go
some
out
local
and
hero somewhere in your office with a spreadsheet and stay until midnight, and hopefully that guy or gal doesn't quit the next day.
exactly. So it's like, so with Century in place, now you make one phone call, you send one email that, hey, I need to make a shift in my supply chain, or we're already doing it because we're anticipating what's happening next. So it takes that pressure off of you and your teams to have to manage all of that detail.
Yes, and I think when we look at our global supply chains, so COVID is over, hallelujah. Um, but we had the issue with the tariffs, and we also are going to have ongoing issues with, hey, I no longer want to buy from that country. I got the State Department told us no longer can you buy from this region of this country. Boom, shut it off. Well, how do I shut it off quickly? And nobody, none of the big customers you work with the largest companies in the world, none of them need the reputational damage of having violated a State Department edict. Um, None of them also want to say, oh, yeah, there was a tariff change and we should have done this, but we didn't because we couldn't move fast enough. And I bet we could stand up at a whiteboard and list 100 disruptions that we think could easily happen over the next 12 months.
Oh yeah, I mean, we've seen 100 in the last 12 months easily, right?
And that we've always had disruptions. I think what's changed a little bit is now everyone's got a scorecard, everyone has visibility, and then us pesky end customers, we are so demanding. Like if I told you about a technology thing I bought I bought it on Tuesday and it said it's going to deliver Saturday, and I kind of didn't believe it. So later on, there was a knock at the door. I go, finally. It was like a half hour later, but that's become my new expectation. Is I want it. It should be here.
Yep. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, the consumer expectations are there. They're driving it all the way back up the supply chain. And you mentioned, the more recent situations, and a perfect one is, when the tariffs first started hitting in China. Our customers, needed to stop supply chains temporarily while they figured out what was happening. And so with our Visit platform, which again is in every origin, all the vendors are
Wait, how do
using
you
it.
spell that?
Viziv, Visiv,
Viziv.
Viziv,
All right, all
Visiv.
right. And that's your OCM.
That's our OCM global operating platform. It's in our customers. Our customers have access to it. Their vendors have access to it. But so we were able to go into there. We have a technology in there called Vibe, which is validations integrated by event, and this is where we can enable any kind of controls that we want. So we were able to go in there and immediately shut off supply chains from China until the customer could figure out what they wanted to do. And so how would you do that without somebody like Century there and without our Visiv technology? And actually, I saw an article in the Wall Street Journal, a big retailer, their provider had been sending out emails to the vendors to say stop shipping. And the Wall Street Journal got a hold of it, and it was front page news. At Century, it just happened behind the scenes. Nobody needed to hear about it. And then, when the customer was ready to turn back on the volume, again, it was one flip of a switch. So that ability to adjust things, and it doesn't have to be something that big. It could be, let's say you have a distribution center and you have a situation going on. Maybe there's a fire at a DC or something else has happened and you need to divert cargo, right? You don't want to be thinking about which vendors are shipping where. You just want to come to Century and give us an Excel file and say, hey, here's all the product that we want to divert somewhere else, right? Obviously, we do it all through APIs and things like that as well. But sometimes it's like, hey, I just got to get this data to you right now so you can adjust my supply chain. And that's exactly what we
I
do.
would also say in the last 20 years, we've weaned ourselves off of inventory. So you can't carry a whole bunch of inventory if your competition doesn't. So you can say, well, just in case. So we did this during COVID. We never knew what to order, and they're like, I didn't get what I wanted, so now I'm going to order way more than I need just in case it doesn't get here in time. And then it took, I don't know, 6 months or a year to work all that inventory out. That was a crazy time. But I guess my point is inventory carrying costs get very high. And, right now we're talking on April 10th. I don't want to receive the winter jackets that I needed uh, in February on April 10th. Um, a lot of parts, electronics, automotive, stuff like that goes bad. They become obsolete very quickly. So
Well, it's the same with most retail products when you think about it, right? Like I'm a big mountain biker, right? I don't want last year's mountain bike. I want this year's mountain bike, right? And so if it's not there when I want to shop for it, then I'm going to a different brand.
yeah, so I feel like the OCM is a solution for helping me stay lean on my inventory because I can't be profitable if I have too much inventory. We in the transportation logistics space sometimes overlook the maybe more expensive piece of the supply chain, which is inventory management.
Well, and there's a couple of parts to that too. The fact, like you mentioned, COVID, right? And so at kind of the tail end of that, everybody was trying to get product in, and you're paying 10, 15, $20,000 a container. And then 6 months later, you had the product sitting in your warehouse, the rates were back down in the basement, and you had paid all this extra money for that, right? So the timing is so critically important in when you're making these purchases and that you're buying the right amounts of it, right? But there's also a factor, a lot of the apparel retailers, for example, they have what's called floor sets. And so those floor sets could change every month. Some change seasonally or whatever. And so they want that product to flow through their DCs so they can cross stock it right out to the stores. If that product, and so you think about, okay, well, I don't want my product to be late, but you also don't want it to be too early because now you've got to put it into storage at the distribution center and then pull it back out of storage to ship it to the DC. That's added cost, right? So in a lot of cases, we'll be looking at that and adjusting based on those floor set dates so that the product is hitting the DC exactly when it needs to instead of getting there way too early and then going into storage, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah, it's not an easy business. Not an easy business. I got to tell
no,
you,
for sure.
Jim, many moons ago, I went to work for a Silicon Valley tech company, and we were making forecasting software for. It was mostly automotive stuff, but it can lots of applications. It was mostly automotive stuff. And I remember I met with the CEO, who was kind of tech royalty, and he made the trip out to Michigan, and he's showing me pictures of his castle over in Scotland. I was like, okay, yeah, I don't have one. but um and I remember him saying to me, he goes, Joe, the very worst thing that can happen is when a customer wants to buy and the product isn't there. And I go, yes. He goes, not enough inventory. I go, yes, that's horrible. The worst thing ever. He goes, except if you have too much inventory. And he goes, so what you need is the exact right amount of inventory on hand. And I go, yes. And he goes, and it never happens. I was like, oh yeah, we're in a fight. That's a tough one. Yes. I heard somebody tell me this not so long ago. They said we had too much inventory coming in. And they just said it was, I think it was going to go to, I think it was going to Long Beach or LA. And they said, but we're just going to store it anyway. So they said, they looked into it and they're like, it's better off being on the boat. So they were going to divert that boat to go to Houston to get
Okay,
like an
yeah.
extra however
Extra
many
transit
days. They
time.
go,
Yeah.
yeah, we basically had free storage on the boat. I don't know if free is the right number, but I was like, yeah, if you have all the information in front of you, you can make better decisions. And
Well, and tying into that a little bit too. One of the key services we do is to look at customer supply chains and help them determine how to um, reduce the number of fully loaded containers coming direct from the supplier. So, there's two types of freight that we would normally handle, three really, but what's called CFS CY, which means the vendor is delivering to our consolidation freight station loose cartons, and we are consolidating it into a full container to go to the container yard, right? So CFS CY. The other is CY, where the vendor is going to fill the container at their door and deliver it to the container yard, right? And so what we'll find is that customers that don't have an OCM provider in place will tend to order more to fill those containers. So they might order a year's worth of supply of something to get a full container, or, like ordering in those lots that they don't necessarily need to. Whereas when we bring Century in, we can have those goods delivered to our warehouse, consolidate them with other vendors for that same customer, and still ship full container loads, but allow the customer to order lesser quantities. So now you're not doing, 6 months of stock of a particular product, you're doing 3 or 2. And so, that piece really helps. And then the other thing that we do is enable concept of a global or a national order. And so instead of a customer necessarily having to, because a vendor is going to have a minimum order quantity, right? Like, hey, you've got to order 500 units of this, 1,000 units of this. And so many customers, what they end up doing is they're cutting a PO to each distribution center. But they have to hit that minimum order quantity. So now it's like, okay, I got to order 1,000 to each DC, even though I don't need that many. So with these national orders, what we can do is bring it into our facility, and then we can load and ship out to those distribution centers, but still allow for that MOQ from the vendor side, right? So it allows the customer to really refine their order volumes and still, reduce the overall number of containers that they're shipping.
yeah, you can be a little more precise with what's happening. And I think of it as a little more surgical. And let's face it, in these times, the disruptions and the hassles that are going to hit the supply chains are. I think after COVID, we thought, "Whew, done with that." And now I think we're just going, yeah, with wars and uh, not just wars, but also
Oh,
tariff
yeah,
discussions. This
tariffs
is
and
it's
yeah,
never going away. Anyway,
strikes, all of that, right?
we'll
Yeah.
come back and talk about this more in a minute. But tell us a little bit about you, Jim. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you joined the behemoth that is Century.
Sure, absolutely. So, so yeah, grew up in New Jersey, New Jersey boy or Jersey boy, and I moved to Virginia probably about 25 years ago or so. Um, I was always I loved working, and so worked really from my early teens and just different odds and ends jobs. Went through high school, really didn't know what I wanted to do coming out of high school. I was working at a money room facility for a major bank in the New Jersey, New York area, and so it was a really cool job. We had just banks of tellers, and we would get all the deposits from the bridges going over to New York, Giant Stadium, all the food stores, like literally millions and millions of dollars in these teller booths.
Oh, I've seen that documentary.
And it was crazy, right? And so I was kind of coordinating the shipments and things like that. So it was a fun job, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So college wasn't right for me at that point in time. I had a boss that came in and brought a PC in and said, "Hey, Jim, see what you can do with this." And so it was early days of PCs, and I'm like, I just fell in love with it instantly and started realizing like, oh my gosh, what's possible here? And started to build apps and work with the IT folks at the bank and came up with some really cool ideas. And at that point, I realized, okay, this is what I want to do. And so I found a technology school in New Jersey. It was a 9-month program, and it was just focused on, at that time, mainframe programming, but using PC technologies, something called Microfocus COBOL. So went through that 9-month program, graduated at the top of the class, got a job at a tech company that was involved in logistics, was there for about 6 months, and then Century came along, and they had bought this software and installed it in 6 countries in Asia, and it wasn't working. Like the software wasn't communicating back to the main hub, and so they came over to our company. They were sister companies to us, and they said, "Hey, we need some a computer guy to figure this out for us." And they're like, "Well, Jim, just did all this education on computer programming and PCs and everything because it was a PC application." So they sent me. So I go over and I take a look at what's going on and try to figure out their application. And the next thing I know, and I'm like 22 years old, right? I'm on a plane to Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore,
Oh,
Japan.
wow.
And I'd only been on a plane once in my life to North Carolina, right? And now it's like, go figure it out. So I get to these countries and these people are yelling at me in different languages that the system's not working, right? And I'm trying to figure it out and get it working in each place. The funniest story was
That
like,
was before we had a ton of expats across the world.
yeah, it was. Yeah, right. There wasn't a lot there at that point in time. We didn't have the internet yet.
I went to China a lot back in the day, and I always remember people go, "What'd you do?" I was like, "Well, we didn't watch TV because there's no American TV."
No,
And
you're
and
right.
I,
There was
and I
absolutely
said
none. Yeah.
the internet was around, but not there. And so I said, and
Yeah,
then
you would bring a book and
well, unfortunately, I was with the
um,
fellas, so we just said we will go down to the lobby and to the bar, and then to the next bar and watch Australia rules football or something. But yeah, that was not easy traveling back then.
no, no. And the technology was not easy either, right? Because you're trying to figure out how to get these things working. And again, like back then, email, wasn't free. You had to pay for it and you had to be connected with a provider. We spent so much money on email moving data around that I think it was AT&T back in the day took me to a Rod Stewart concert in a suite because I was spending so much on email with them. It was crazy. But anyways, I get into Korea, and Korea, their system, it's just PCs. Their PC is not talking through the modem back to the US, right? And so I'm trying to figure it out. I'm looking at everything. I got a whole bunch of people standing around me, like, how are you going to fix this? And I go and I look behind the computer and the modem, and I realize the wires are plugged in backwards. And so I switch the wires, and I come
Technical
around and
genius.
I hit it, and it goes green, and it lights up, and everybody starts cheering in the office. And then we went out for drinks after that. And
There's always seems to be that part of it.
exactly, right. So yeah, no, it's just been an amazing journey of,
So you never
in the
left
early
Century. You
days.
How long have you been there?
Yeah, 37 years.
So you
37
started
years.
as
Yeah.
just the tech wonk who was going across
Yeah.
the ocean, and now you're the CTO.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and back then it was, you were really inventing stuff to figure out how to make things work, right? Like bulletin board systems and, fax solutions and all these kind of things. And now, like, I look at the technology and I'm so excited about how fast it's moving, with the AI technologies that we're seeing now and Claude and other tools like that. Finally, you're really able to materialize things, as people are talking about them and coming up with these ideas. And so it's super exciting. But yeah, so my career's just evolved over the years with Century, tons and tons of travel, which has been
Well,
fantastic.
Century's obviously grown over those last 38 years too.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think honestly, we're recognized as the lead provider in the OCM space right now. So it's great to be part of this journey and to see the customers that we're working with. So yeah, and then yeah, I've got two boys, both computer science degrees. So followed in my footsteps there, and my wife, and yeah, we're out here in Virginia. And like I said, I'm a big mountain biker. I race, I ride. So lots of great trail systems out here.
Very nice, very nice. By the way, when I was working in China, China programs, um, the internet was around, but it was just sort of not used there. And I remember one of the guys who I worked with, Ken, came to me one day and said, "Hey, Joe, I think we can." He was from Shanghai, and he says, "I think we can send an email from China." I was like, "All right, let's do that." I go, "It'd be great if we could stop sending everything by FedEx or no, it was DHL." So he said, "So and so sent me an email," and I was like, "Cool." And and then one day we were at a meeting, and he raised his hand. He goes, "Hey, Joe, uh, I received the email." I go, "Oh, good. So it works." He goes, "It took 3 weeks."
Oh my
And
gosh.
I think people don't recognize that wasn't so
Uh,
long ago that the world internet wasn't connected. So unless that guy came in and that server was on, it didn't, or it didn't batch, you didn't get that email. Anyway, we're high tech now. So there's a few things I want to talk about. I want to talk a little more about OCM, demystifying that whole thing, but um, talk about again some of the problems that are out there that OCM can charge, I should say, can solve. I always feel like if you can't describe the problem, you can't describe the solution. So, what are some of the problems that you see with people who, when they finally call you or your sales guys back and they say, okay, yes, let's do this? What are some of the problems? What's the last straw? What's driving them crazy not having an OCM solution?
Yeah, so I think it's the orchestration of all the players in the process. And I'd mentioned that earlier. You could have hundreds to thousands of suppliers. You have all of these transport providers. And then when you think about the global logistics, or the logistics and transportation team, right? Without an OCM provider, they probably have procurement and the buying teams breathing down their neck, trying to figure out, like, what happened with this order. When is this going to get here? Why is this always late? Why didn't this cost what we thought it was going to cost? And so, so much of that gets resolved with an OCM provider, because we're bringing all of that information together, and then we're exposing it to all the right parties. And so when you think about that procurement team, when they can see that, yes, your vendor is consistently booking late, right? Now they can have a conversation with that vendor with the information. Same with the ocean carriers, right? Like I was talking to a customer at TPM, one of our big logistics conferences, and she said, it was a new customer, and she said, this is the first time that I'm walking into TPM with facts to share with my carriers to say, this is where you delivered well, and this is where you did not deliver well, right? And so with our Visive platform, the customer has access to all of that information, and so, like, we end up giving superpowers to the logistics teams, right? Because now they're in this position of power where they can get the right information to the right people. So when you think about, like, let's say a vendor's creating a booking, and that order is going to be late, right? Well, who needs to approve that? And so we design all of that up front with the customer. Okay, if it's going to be a late order, the buying team needs to approve it, and we know who that buyer is that's responsible for that vendor. So we're routing that message directly in the system to that individual buyer. It's not going to some generic mailbox somewhere where somebody has to look through it and figure it out, right? It's going to that person to resolve. And so now that empowers that individual. So they feel like, okay, I've got control of the supply chain, and I can engage and manage my vendors, right?
Is this kind of akin to a, an inbound transportation management team?
Yeah, I would say so. Absolutely.
So what I'm thinking about is a large automotive company says, hey, we have this plant is going to receive thousands of parts from thousands of suppliers, so they can put them all together in this assembly plant. And I could trust everybody. Hey, you guys all use my TMS, and I'll ship in here. Um, it's tough. And then also one of the challenges you have is everybody's kind of trying to figure out their own way to get it there, right? So as a inbound logistics provider, you say, hey, what we'll do is we're going to create some best practices for everybody. And if somebody's consistently shipping late and causing the plant some worry or even closing a line down, we're going to do something about it ahead of time. And um, obviously, there's some volume stuff that goes in with a transportation provider. But for you guys, you're their eyes and ears on the other side of the world. Am I right to say that?
That's correct. Yeah. And again, in most cases, we're since we're not the transportation provider, like I said, we do have an NVO arm, but normally we're the core is the OCM provider. That's our primary focus, right? So we're working in your best interest to manage all of that. And so when you think about, like, when capacity is tight, you may have certain product that you want moving first instead of other product. And so we have access to all of your priorities. Like QVC is a big customer of ours, right? They have today's special value, and so they have a whole product offering that wraps around this core product of the day that they're selling, and all of that needs to be in the warehouse for their show to be successful. And so we have all of those codes in our system, so they can see exactly where that product is. And if we know there's a capacity issue, that product's going to move first over other products. But when you think about the vendors, if you don't have an OCM provider in place, and those vendors are booking directly with the ocean carriers, each of those vendors, they want to get their product moving because they want to get paid, right? And they want to get it off their dock. But that may not be in your best interest. So that's where Century comes in.
Yeah. Now, you have facilities around the world.
Yep, every port, we have a warehouse office operations team, our people, Century's people managing your shipments, right? And
So,
so
so using your technology, but also your team, and are your customers also touching the OCM product? Is it integrated with theirs?
it is. So what's happening there is in most cases, the customers are using the product itself to interact with our teams, their vendors, and to understand what's happening in their supply chain. But then we're also feeding data into their ERP systems. So, in most cases, the supply chain or logistics team, they're invisive every day. For some customers, their buying teams are invisive. For other customers, their buying teams are in SAP or Oracle or, whatever their ERP system is. So we're pushing all that data back into the system so they have that visibility. So it's really, up to the customer. And then we've got some customers that they might have just an off-the-shelf pure technology solution. And so then we'll integrate with that solution and bring that data forward.
So I'm sure they're getting. You guys have your own platform, and then it also integrates with theirs. So if I say I just want to go into the Century's OCM, I can do that. If I want to pull it in, and I'm assuming I'm going to have much better data as a result of working with you guys.
Absolutely, yeah. Because again, think about it, right? Like if you've got all these vendors transmitting information to you directly, right, and all these carriers sending you data, and you want to change carriers, right? So now you've got to go figure out, okay, I got to set up new integrations with this other carrier, or I've got to go pay a third party for shipment visibility data. We take care of all of that, right? Because we're connected with all the carriers, connected with all the terminals, and that's what we do all day for every one of our customers. So you benefit from, our experience and knowledge because like if we build something for Energizer, for example, and Berlin Packaging, another big manufacturing customer of ours, can benefit from it. Well, we can share those modules and solutions.
Yep. I have a buddy of mine. He had a new venture, and it was an automotive thing, and he had a new supplier, and it was in China. And I said, "Are you want to work with him?" He goes, "Yeah, I talked to their sales guy. I've seen the part. It works." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And and he goes, what are you concerned about?" I go, "I'm concerned. Do they have a plant? I don't know. How do you know they have a plant?" And he goes, "I'm not flying over there." And I go, "No, you got to get your logistics provider too." So I connected him with a friend of mine, and he called me back like a week later. He goes, they got in the car, drove over there, and said, "Yeah, it's a nice plant, it's a nice facility. We knocked on the door. The name matches what you said it would." And I keep thinking, in this world, you need to do that because there is scam everywhere. And let's face it, it's a lot easier to scam someone who's 3,000 miles away and doesn't speak your language, and I can't prosecute you.
No, yeah. And so, we're there at Origin. So yes, we can help our customers from that aspect with the vendors. We have all kinds of modules to support like CT-PAT validation for CBP so that basically a vendor goes through a whole factory authorization process inside of our system. And they can't book from that location until it's all validated. So that way, it's good from that point forward. We have inspection capabilities, in the system from a technology perspective and through third-party providers, so that we can help customers on product inspection. We have warehouses in every country, so we can do any kind of value-added services like labeling, kitting solutions, other things like that for customers. So again, like if you're if you're sourcing from a new origin, or if you're, if you're having some kind of a struggle with product mix or something like that, Century can help because we have the people and the facilities there at those locations.
I've run into this years ago. I didn't work on this consulting project, but somebody asked me to. Um, they were making, so if you go to Vegas, this company was making, you walk into those soaring rooms where they've got all the beautiful woodwork. A lot of that was made in China. And, the candelabras, next time you're in Vegas, just notice it's millions and millions of pieces get shipped there. And they were being shipped not in the right order. They were also, a lot of it was broken. And they said we need somehow to manage this before it gets put in a box and shipped for a month, because the worst thing that can happen isn't that your stuff was broke, that it was shipped broke a month ago. and um, and it's one thing to say that that was incomplete. It's a whole other thing to say we could have known that a month ago. And if you have Chinese partners or Indian partners or any, it's not as if they're all trying to screw things up. Everyone wants to work together, but it's nice to have eyes and ears and boots on the ground that say, yeah, I just talked to Joe and I understand what he needs. I got some pictures. I'm going to go over and see that the new supplier is up and ready to provide what they're supposed to.
Yeah, yeah, and it's it's those conversations and relationships, and that's our people at each of these origin ports. They have relationships with your vendors. They have relationships with your carriers, right? And especially when you get into crunch time periods for ocean freight, those relationships are
Oh,
critical,
having their
right?
mobile
And
phone number makes a big difference.
absolutely. So yeah, as we're seeing, these AI advancements that are taking place, and they're huge. There's definitely autonomous operations really beginning to flow across supply chain processes. But our feeling is you need the people to be able to really deal with those complex solutions. What we're trying to do is focus on getting our people out of just the simple step-by-step processes. Let's let AI and automation take care of those pieces and really allow our supply chain experts to spend the time, dealing with situations or anticipating situations and resolving things before they become a problem.
So really, what we just talked about is some of the problems. And again, one of them I had just from some notes when we were talking the other day. It's the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. VUCA. I haven't said it in a long time, but VUCA isn't going away. It is just part of our supply chain now. We will always have these problems. Um, and we also have that inventory problem, which we touched on a little bit, which is I don't ever want to be short, but I don't want too much. I can't. It's you described it to me as the Goldilocks solution. I want it to be the right amount, and if I can't control it with really good numbers, inputs and outputs, what I need is the last minute change. What I need is somebody who's there who can say, we can make, if you tell me today we can have it changed by tomorrow. I think this is super important. Um,
Yeah, because when you think about it, like once the goods are in that container and on the water, there's not a lot you can do with it at that point, right?
the decision's made.
That's it, right? But before that, there's a lot of opportunities of what you could do, right? So potentially, okay, we could change it to air, or we could find an expedited service to get it there faster, right? Or get it there slower if it doesn't need to be there that fast. And so, the more information you have earlier in the supply chain process, the more powerful you are. But and you've got especially the retailers, they have amazing demand planning systems that understand and anticipate their customers, but there's still many out there that have this kind of black hole on the origin side, and that's where they're factoring in more time than they need to because they don't really have a clear line to how much time they need, right? And the other piece of it too is if you're not managing your suppliers, like with our customers, every supplier has a booking window, and that might be 14 to 21 days before vessel departure. That supplier needs to book with us. And we're managing that and reporting on that and engaging with those suppliers so that if they haven't booked, it's a problem. Whereas if you're not managing your suppliers, they may just always wait till the last possible day to book, right? Or maybe you don't have a window and you just hope that they're going to be there before the vessel leaves. So with Sentry in place, we're orchestrating all of that so that you have more confidence in each step in that supply chain. You have more confidence in what the dwell times are going to be across the supply chain so that you can make better decisions on what those lead times need to look like. And that is a better way to manage inventory levels.
And I think also just having awareness of local business practices, local customs, the local holidays make a big difference. I always remember having challenges during Chinese New Year,
Chinese New Year, yeah.
and somebody saying, "Oh, why didn't you know that?" I was like, "How the hell am I supposed to know? I mean, how much do they know about Christmas, New Year's? I mean, it's unrealistic that I get a brand new supplier in China or India or wherever, and I'm immediately aware of the local issues that I now have to deal with. And I'm probably asking my new supplier a lot to say, you should fully understand what I'm doing here in Detroit, Michigan, although you are on the other side of the world. Yeah. So this is the OCM. It's going to save me money. It's going to save me money, make me money slash one or both. It's also going to help me better serve all my customers and just get a much more um, precise decision making and execution platform than I have without it.
So a couple of things there. Absolutely going to do that, right? It's going to reduce stress across your organization because you're dispersing the information that people need, that the ones that need to kind of action what's happening in the supply chain, right? So it's no longer coming through like one person or one small team that everybody's going to try to find out what's happening, right? The organization understands what's happening in their supply chain because of our Visit platform, because of the integrations that we have moving data, through their systems. So that's super powerful. And there's also, just a cost savings from the number of people that you need to run a supply chain internationally. We have customers that have very, very small supply chains that have not grown over the years, but their volumes have grown dramatically. And it's because of the Visive technology, it's because of our people. We become an extension of your supply chain, as an importer. And so our teams are there to help you to manage that. We've had customers that, like their team is out for some reason, and we are in essence running their supply chain during that period. We've, unfortunately had some customers that have gone through cyber attacks, and we've been able to keep things running for them while they're restoring systems. So yeah, having an OCM provider is, it reduces the stress on your organization for sure. It allows you to be more agile and adaptive to what's happening in the supply chain. Again, if we go back to what we were talking about earlier, when you can make one phone call, send one email, and shut down your supply chain or redirect your supply chain or change a carrier instantly, like that is power, right? And that power comes from OCM.
Yeah. And by the way, make no mistake, during certain times, like COVID was a perfect example. We saw what can happen to supply chains. I think Peloton has this fantastic product, but everyone started buying it during COVID, and I won't get into all the details. I'm sure if you Google their supply chain problems, this is something that went right to Wall Street. This was in the Wall Street Journal talking about their challenges. One of my daughters bought a couch, and she said, "Yeah, they said it'll be here in 8 months." Like, oh man, 8 months. In the meantime, you just sit on the beanbag chair that we have here. Um, anyway, so yeah, another note that I had in this from our conversation before is this is upstream value for downstream gain, and it reminds me, and this is never ever changes. If you're having a problem in your supply chain or where you're at your supply chain, look upstream in the process. And this is a perfect place. This is a perfect choke point to look upstream. Anything that I want to make a change on, I can make that change right there. It's an inflection point.
Yeah. If you've got that information at your fingertips, right? And it's really at each milestone in the supply chain. So like when you think about on the inbound side, you've got a lot of cost exposure at the ports, right? So you have, your detention and demurrage charges if containers are sitting at the port too long or sitting at your DC for too long, right? And what we've seen with the tariffs is some customers have made a switch to more DDP shipments where the vendor is responsible for clearing the goods into the country. DDP is delivered duty paid. And so what happens is you don't have as much visibility or control on those shipments. They get to the port and all of a sudden you're notified that you've got these containers there and you've got to deal with it. So at Century, we'll manage those DDP shipments as well. So we'll collect the documents or the data from those vendors and bring them into the system so you can still see it in Visiv, even though you're not managing it as an FOB, free on board shipment from origin. So we give you visibility to that. And then when you think about, again, like what's at the port, having that better visibility, now you can notify your truckers faster so they have better planning information so that you can get the stuff off the port in time, get it to your DC. And again, we can, on the front end of the supply chain, we can understand what your capacities are at each of your distribution centers and then adjust for that as well so that we're not overloading a particular DC where they're going to just have stacks of containers sitting in the yard that they can't handle, or at least give them visibility that, hey, this is coming in 6 weeks or 4 weeks, and you need to be prepared for it.
Yeah, it's it's something that we need. So let me ask a question. What percentage of large importers are using some sort of OCM?
Yeah, so I'd say there's a large percentage on the retail side that are doing it. I think on the manufacturing side, it's less, but it's growing. Like manufacturers are recognizing and seeing the value of what we're offering, and are moving towards that as well. It's in the past, it's been heavily focused on North America. So like if you were to go to Europe, OCM was never really a big service offering. They have very big freight forwarders there that manage everything. But now we're starting to see European customers coming to us wanting this capability to kind of separate that a little bit, right? And not be so tied to a transportation focused provider. And be working with an OCM provider that can give you the tech and the independence, right? Give you, like, we're just focused on you as the importer. That's what we care about most, right?
Well, I
Um,
think about we're all trying to become more proactive. And what I want is I want to be able to say, I take my logistics team, my planners, my buyers, my trackers, I want to make them all more consultative. I want them to be able to look at data that is increasingly available and say, hey, we could save 10% if we did this. I don't want them, and nor do they want to be in the business of what I did all day today was make phone calls and delay and pull forward, delay and pull forward, and try and communicate with people who speak a different language or on the other side of the world in a different time zone. And I mean, that execution sometimes can be very messy and very difficult. It burns people out. Versus if I say, yeah, you still are going to be able to do that, but hopefully, given the tools that Century can bring me, you can start being more proactive and also not have to do all the execution yourself.
exactly. Yeah. So they can. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, so you can move to that level where you actually plan.
Exactly. And so now on the execution side, you've got people around the world on Century's staff that can help you with that execution, right? And in some cases, it could be, a scrappy start of something where they're testing out a new model, and then they're going to scale that model. And so we can be there to help with that, right? And because we're taking care of all the integrations, all the orchestration across those different providers, you as the importer don't have to worry about that, right? Like if you're going to use a different carrier, if you're going to use a different transloader, we're integrating different customs broker. We're taking care of all of that, so you don't have to worry about that. And then because we're cleansing and organizing all of this data and bringing it together, now we can expose it to you, to Joe, as you were saying before, do exactly what you want with it, right? So like feed it into your own AI engines, feed it into your own tools, and do your
I think
analysis, right?
we didn't discuss this too much, but I'm pretty sure when it gets into your hands, it comes back to me enriched.
For sure. Yeah.
And we all want better data.
cleansed, enriched, certified in essence, right? So unfortunately, in the industry, there's still so many challenges with like it's almost embarrassing how hard it is to get trusted vessel schedule information. Like you could go to three places and they will tell you that vessel information differently. And it's like, okay, who do I trust, right? Even, like a vessel arrival. I mean, these vessels are really big, right? And like you can go to, two carriers that are both on that same vessel, and you could get different information about when that vessel is going to arrive. And so we cleanse all of that, we certify it, we analyze who's got the best data, and then we decide who to trust where, so that as an importer you don't have to worry about that, right?
So I know before we hit the record button, you were talking about some of your big customers. Talk about some of your big customers, and one or two that I wrote down was Canadian Tire and Trader Joe's. Um, Talk about what these companies, what made them say, "Yeah, I'm going to work with Century on this."
Yeah, so Canadian Tire is 20 plus year relationship, and when they nominated us, Century was a much smaller player, and what they saw in us was this opportunity to use our expertise and training alongside their engineering skills to build out new capabilities in the platform, and that's exactly what we did. So we built new solutions that they wanted to create that benefited all of our Century customers, but gave Canadian Tire exactly what they needed at that time. And so, from Canadian Tire's perspective, their entire global supply chain, about 40,000 containers a year, managed by Century, everything from issuing purchase orders to the suppliers, to vendor chargeback programs, to transload operations, inbound planning, all of it done inside of our Visive application, and hundreds of users in at Canadian Tire, supply chain analysts, and all different types of folks in the platform every
Now,
day.
Canadian Tire, are they making tires or are they just a distributor? I shouldn't say just. Are
So,
they a
so the
distributor?
name's a little bit misleading, so they started in just the automotive space, but they're more or less like a Target kind of uh, like little bit of Dick's Sporting Goods, like a sporting goods section. They're a mix, and they do have auto, services inside the facility as well. But they're a big box hard goods retailer in Canada, and probably the best known name in Canada right now from a branding perspective. So yeah, everybody shops at Canadian Tire for something, home goods, tools.
I live right over the border, and I don't see. I've heard the name. I don't know if I'm trying to think if I saw it when I was in Windsor, though.
Yeah. So no, and they have Mark's Works Warehouse, which is a clothing division. So we handle all of that. They have Sport Check. So yeah, a bunch of different brands up there. And then yeah, some of the big ones here, Abercrombie. So both handle their retail and their franchise services. Uh, um, yeah, huge operation there. Dick's Sporting Goods, another customer that recently came on. Dick's is amazing. I mean, when you look at like all of the kids' sports and everything else that's exploding, their new store formats are just amazing if you've gone through them. But then other customers like Kubota Tractor, right? They're totally different model there. Energizer battery, right? Like so, all different components and types of product offerings. And everybody's supply chain is unique and special, and I think that's what Century does better than anybody else, is we're able to adapt our people and our technology to the way their supply chain needs to
I
operate.
like it. I like it. So, Jim, I'll make sure I put a link to your LinkedIn profile, link to your website, any of the links you and your go-to-market team give me. I'll put those in the show notes. So, if somebody's listening today and they said, "Yes, this Jim, he knows something. I want to do this." What is it? What does it look like? Beyond the sales process, when somebody says we're going to start working with an OCM provider, ideally Century. What does that look like?
Yeah. So we have a dedicated implementation team. Honestly, I think the best in the industry. And it starts with a simple questionnaire that helps us to understand your current supply chain processes, and that transforms into a standard operating procedure, and then into that Vibe validations integrated event that I was talking about earlier, where we map all of your supply chain controls against each milestone into the platform. We build out the integrations, and we do all the heavy lift on the integration. So whatever you've got today, for purchase order data and for shipment data, we're going to map to that. It could be an EDI document, it could be an API, it could be a flat file, an Excel spreadsheet, right?
Well, yeah, the biggest companies in the world are very likely to be an early adopter of technology, which means, well, a lot of them are still using EDI, and that has to be okay. And I always remember when API came around, a number of people said on my podcast, "Yeah, Joe, no more EDI. It's just a matter of time." And I was like, I believed him because I don't know what I'm talking about, but I now know that's not going to happen.
Nope, it's yeah, and it's just folks don't want to go back and re-engineer that because it works, and in a lot of cases it spreads so far across the organization that you're just changing this one pipe that's feeding lots of things, right? And so we take care of all that. It's our in-house team that does all the business integration work, and then we're working with the vendors to train the vendors. And honestly, like nowadays, most customers we go into, anywhere between 25 and 50% of their vendors are already in our platform. So they already know how to work with Sentry, how to talk to us. And so it's not a big shift for them at all. And so we train the vendors, get them up to speed, and then set a transition date and either start new or move from your existing provider to Sentry. And that can take anywhere from maybe 6 weeks up to 6 months, depending, but the average time is probably like 60 to 90 days to do an implementation fully. But yeah, we've done them in 6 weeks with very large customers. It just depends on the complexity of all the integrations.
So I'm assuming there's kind of weekly meetings and then maybe going to monthly. Are you able to show them? I mean, speak about the improvements. Everybody likes to have numbers. What are those numbers showing? Are they saying, yes, we have fewer errors, or what's the results they're seeing?
Yeah, so again, there's the ROI kind of varies
Yeah,
depending on the
depending on the
customer,
company.
right?
Yeah.
A big piece of it, as I was talking about earlier, is around the consolidation. So what we'll find quite often, especially with somebody that's not using an OCM provider today, is that there's a lot of light loaded equipment going out. So a vendor might be shipping a light loaded 40 or 45-foot container because that's what they could
The
get,
only thing worse
and
than
so
empty is half empty.
exactly. So you're paying to ship space, right? And so right out of the gates, we can say, and we have a whole bunch of our ROI calculators where we will look at that information and share with you the numbers of how much we think we can save you in ocean transportation costs. And then we have an AI routing engine that makes the best routing decisions for you based on all your rules, your contracts, your carrier allocations. And what that can also factor in is when to use spot rates, right? Because in certain times, a spot rate may be better than your contract rate. And as long as we know we're still going to fulfill your contract rate, we can go use that spot rate for a while, right? So there's an opportunity in certain times to be able to save dramatic amounts of money in ocean transportation costs. Exactly. 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 Yep. No, so that's one area. Duty reduction is another big area of savings. So, obviously duty is a big expense, right? We can, through our system and our technology, we can collect and document the origin transportation costs. So like the first mile trucking and other things like that, and strip that out of the cost of goods so that you're not paying duty on that. And so we find huge savings there for customers that don't have that implemented today. So right out of the gates, if you're not doing a duty reduction program today, you need to give us a call because we can help you and save money right there. And then when I talked about it before, but on the inland side too, around the reduction of demurrage and detention costs, right? If you have better information and you're communicating with everybody in the supply chain, you can get those containers off the port faster, through your DC faster, and so you minimize that risk as well. And those are just a couple. There's lots more.
Well, yeah, and I keep thinking, there's going to be those things that everyone measures and it's on a scorecard. What we often miss is um, you have a logistics team, again, the planners, the trackers, the buyers, and they're doing something. Usually they're really focused on execution, which we think is a good thing. But we all know now, as we kind of transition with all the cool data we have and starting to use AI solutions, we want to say, hey, how do I get 10% better at blank? As opposed to, yeah, I tracked 15 shipments today and I fixed 14 or whatever it is. That's not the meaningful work we want for our teams. It's certainly not a bad place to start, but I think if we can elevate our teams to say, yeah, now my team is up a level and having a lot more impact on our bottom line and on our customer service and our whatever our deliverables are.
Well, and if you think about that, like the more trusted data you have that you can feed into these AI systems like ChatGPT and Claude and other tools like that, it can do really deep analysis, but you got to make sure that you have trusted data to start with. And I did a blog post a couple of months ago talking about automation exhaust. And so the idea there is that when we're using these AI systems and automation systems, they're creating exhaust, they're creating data that's valuable, right? So like when our AI routing engine runs, it has to have all of this information to understand the best way to route that cargo. Well, all that data gets snapshotted, right? And so we have it at that point in time. So if we want to go back later and do scenario planning against like, okay, what would have happened if we chose this option instead of that option? We have all the data to be able to do that. So it's really kind of just getting started, but this concept of tracking the data, the exhaust from these automation efforts, I think is going to become extremely powerful information in the
I
supply chain
like it.
going forward.
I like it. If you send me that article, I'll put that in the show notes.
Okay, I will. Yeah.
Anyway, I want to wrap this bad boy up. I've gone way over my time with you.
Sorry, Joe. I love to talk about this stuff.
No, I'm a big mouth. So I'm talking to my friend Jim McCullen. We're talking about OCM, the new standard for global imports, and Jim works with Century. And OCM stands for Origin Cargo Management. I've never heard that term. I'm sure other people are going, yeah, I have, but I think I've done close to 800 episodes. I never heard anyone mention it on the podcast. So the reason we need OCM if we're in a big importer is shipping got harder, a lot harder. We all lived through COVID. We saw how difficult that was. I mentioned VUCA, my favorite term, which is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. We have that in spades in our supply chains. It felt like disruption during COVID was like, oh, can you believe it? We had disruption. Now it feels like disruption is just an ongoing part of business. And I think maybe we're a little more focused on it now than we used to be because we have the visibility. In the past, we carried excess inventory. We just tolerated late shipments because what are you going to do? So it's a week late to Target, nobody knows. A week late to my door, I know, right? So I think consumer expectations went way up. I think the retailers, the manufacturers, distributors, everybody, the bar got much higher for all of us. And so the disruptions that we used to just go, hey, what are you going to do? There's a storm in India. What are you going to do? Can't do anything about it. Yeah, it's going to be a month late. That's not acceptable anymore. And we also talked a lot about the inventory dilemma. It's the Goldilocks thing. You never want too much inventory. You never want too little inventory. You want the right amount. What you guys do with OCM is you have the ability to kind of at I won't call it a choke point, an inflection point where you can make a decision at the very last minute before it gets loaded onto a ship and shipped across the ocean, whether it's coming from India or Europe or South Carolina, wherever it's going. It is now the last decision. It also gives much better decision whether those containers are going to be full or half full. We also and we're just looking for a lot more speed, and of course, everybody is trying to reduce cost. Another great way to reduce cost, and to be very basic about this is basically upstream value for downstream gain. I mean, this is us. This is the story of our supply chains since the beginning of time. You look upstream to save money. Like that's plain and simple. I wrote another note down here, the intelligent membrane. This is another, OCM is an intelligent membrane, an orchestration platform, whatever you want to call it. It's something I think is fantastic. And I think, given who's using it, the biggest companies in the world, some of that you mentioned today, they're not using it for their health. So, um,
And Joe, you mentioned earlier too, just the fact that okay, in the past there was some crisis going on, and yeah, it's impacting supply chains, and we didn't expect it, and that's just not acceptable anymore to boards, right? It's like, hey, you've had enough chances to understand all the different scenarios. We like to look at it like we're building this toolbox of solutions, and no matter what the next situation is, we just have to figure out what the right tools are to apply. Like we'll go into a war room situation if something dramatic is happening in the industry, where we'll bring the team together and figure out like, okay, what tools are our customers going to need to get through this? And that's what you need to be looking at is like your board's not going to accept that, hey, I didn't think about this possible thing happening, right? Like you've got to be prepared for it, and Century can help you do that.
yeah, yeah. I'll probably get some hate for this, but I'll say it anyway. Um, I live in Michigan, and uh, the grid goes down every once in a while. Like there'll be a storm, and they'll go, "Oh, hey, there was a storm, and this many people no longer have power." And I was like, "Oh, maybe they didn't realize we had storms here." I was like, "We have the same
Right.
storms every damn year." And when somebody says, "No, we have more storms because of climate change," we have always had storms. I don't know if they're getting worse or not. I just know that my expectation has changed. My great grandparents probably danced when they got electricity, right? Me, I have the expectation that it's on because I will melt if I don't have my air conditioning and my mobile and my TV and cable. I mean, what am I going to do? So I feel like now we have much higher expectations as consumers, as business people.
Consumers are not going to accept empty shelves, right? Like they're going to move to a different, retailer at that point. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, enough of my blather. Put a big old bow on this. Why should somebody work with you and the Century team?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, from Century's perspective, first off, as I mentioned earlier, I've been with the company for a long, long time, but we have lots of people that are passionate about supply chain. And if you talk to different people in our organization, they've been with the company for a long time because it's a great place to work. And so when our employees love what they do, that's shared with the customers, right? The customers see that, they feel that. But I have to say, like there's never been a more exciting time at Century. Our brand is so well recognized right now. We have customers approaching us, coming to us saying, hey, we want to talk to you. We have technology platforms coming to us saying, hey, we want to be integrated with you because our customers are demanding that they want to be able to use Century in our platform. And so that's been great. And when we go to bid for the business, like some of the accounts that I mentioned, we're up against every major player in the space. And when they look at the technology platforms and they say Visive, I hear it time and time again that we are ahead of the curve when it comes to what we're delivering in our technology. And that is so exciting as a technology leader to hear that. My teams have built all of this and they're enhancing it, every single day. And now what we're seeing with these AI technologies, like that's the first question we get now when a customer comes in, they want to understand what does Century do? How are we doing it? But then they're like, what are you doing with AI? And I'm so excited to be able to show them what we're doing with AI and what's already in place and where we're headed next. So yeah, I just think there's like a high level of excitement at Century. The major players out there in the space are recognizing us. The competitors are trying to figure out what we're doing, and so it's a really good time. And from a customer perspective, I think time and time again, we deliver to what we say we're going to do, right? So what we commit to, we deliver to, and the customers see and feel the improvements in their supply chain. So reach out.
I love it. I love it. Again, I'll make sure I put a link to your LinkedIn profile, link to your website, any other links you and your go-to-market team give me. I'll put in the show notes, including if you give me that blog post you wrote about
I will. I'll send that to you right now.
automation exhaust. I like that concept. So, what conferences will we see you and the fine folks from Century at?
Yeah, so for us, TPM is our largest conference that we're out. We have a large group of folks there. We had a great TPM this year. We actually had three of our top customers present to other customers about what Century is doing. So
now you're living well over there.
right, it was such a, because usually we're telling the story. We decided this year, let's let them tell the story. And Dick's Sporting Goods was one of those customers. AutoZone was another customer, BJ's Wholesale Club. And so it was such a great experience to have the customers talking about, what we're doing for them. So that was TPM. Manifest, we've been attending. Next year we'll be attending, as a full player
Oh, I
there.
love Manifest. Well, TVM's great too.
And then RELA is the other one. And then we have, local conferences that we attend, but those are the three big ones for us for sure.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Jim.
Thank you, Joe. It was a great chat.
Yep. And thank all of you for listening to my show. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.